So, what's the purpose of inclusion? I think it's fairly obvious what kids with low incidence disabilities or lower cognitive levels gain from inclusion. And a lot of it is really exposure to appropriate socialization and communication skills. A lot of people focus on the academic gains of inclusion or lack of academic gains that inclusion may bring about. While research is not quite certain if there are true academic gains for students with high incidence disabilities in inclusion, what they are finding overall, regardless of disability, students are gaining appropriate social skills and greater communication skills. For our kids, that's one of the main reasons why the push for inclusion has started to occur. Parents were looking around at the peers that these students were in classrooms with and thinking, how are they ever going to learn appropriate social skills if they're surrounded by peers who do not portray those skills that are desired? And then the other thing that our students gain from inclusion, students with low incidence disabilities, is the ability to understand how they function within a greater population. My big saying is there's no special ed hallway in the world. And so eventually, and quite quickly, it creeps up on us, these individuals will have to go about making their way where there is no pull-out hallway, there is no pull-out room. And they will have to be able to understand who they are and how they function within their community on a larger scale, within an area of employment, while other people are participating in their own jobs. So it is so important that we teach these kids how to be them while everybody else in the classroom is being who they are. Kids with neurotypical abilities absolutely gain a greater sense of self-awareness, a greater sense of tolerance, a greater sense of community. These are kids, the kids with low incidence disabilities, that will go on to live next door to the other children in the classroom when they become adults. And so we do have to start creating this environment where everybody understands that we're all in this together, regardless of where we stand at a functional sense. And then what can be learned from our interactions with the kids? It's so important when we as teachers and or our team interact with students with disabilities and low incidence disabilities that we are showing the positives, that we don't look frazzled, we don't look disgruntled, we don't look frustrated or overwhelmed, because kids will watch us. And if we look like everything is okay and we're having a good time and everything is calm and moving, those children will in turn pick up on our interactions and feel in a more positive way about the kids that we're working with. If we walk around looking frantic and overwhelmed, it's going to appear as though the kids that we work with are a lot of work. And why would you ever want to spend time with them? So it's really important that we monitor our interactions and the team that we work with, that everybody's monitoring their affect when they are working with the children. Supplementary supports and services, what are they? Gaskins and the new law states that the child is to be included in regular ed, and that if supplementary supports and services are what it takes for that child to be included, that then inclusion is the answer. And so tons of things are supplementary supports and services, but basically, a specialized teaching tool or technique, team teaching, adapted learning materials, use of a teacher assistant. That would also mean a one-on-one assistant, adapted curriculum, modified curriculum, different specialized equipment, assistive technology, sign language interpreters, modified tests, modified projects, parallel curriculum, which would mean that it's a curriculum that is taken from the general ed curriculum but modified in such a way that it begins to look quite different. What can you do as a teacher? You can do anything. You can adapt, modify, change anything. Curriculum, assignments, projects, the process, how the children get to the overall goal, tasks and tests. The big things that you need to keep in mind is everyone is not expected to do the same thing. And that is probably the hardest concept for many teachers, regular and sometimes special, to realize. If Johnny is not there to get the general education curriculum, Johnny doesn't have to do it. And so we're trying to fit a square peg into a round hole by making Johnny be a part of the general curriculum at the same level we want the other kids to, but thinking we just have to tweak it for him. No, Johnny's going to need much more than a tweaking, and that is okay. Our students really shouldn't be segregated. You shouldn't walk into one of these classrooms and see one of our children sitting in the back with a teacher assistant doing their own thing that has nothing to do with what the other kids are doing. It's not that you should never see it, because sometimes it is appropriate, but it should not be a part of the general practice in the classroom. There needs to be movement in the room. Gone are the days where you can really do whole group direct instruction for a 40-minute time block. There needs to be kids up and moving so that they can get to exactly the types of curriculum they need to take in. Our kids do not have to keep up with the general ed curriculum, especially if it states it directly in their IEP, in the SDI. You should see things like parallel curriculum going on. Just remember exposure, 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 exposure. Who are we to say what children gain from listening to a certain lecture, or listening to a certain story, or hearing kids with neurotypical abilities having a conversation about a given topic? We have to keep in mind that it's not our job to judge what a child is taking in. That exposure can sometimes be the sole purpose of a certain inclusive lesson.